Thumbs
Good.
up.
Mhm.
Thumbs up. Okay. Well, we have a different session today than what we've been doing throughout the week in terms of, offering a different side of the plant, different exposure to the plant. Today is a deep dive into hemp-derived THC and the business, the regulatory components, the entrepreneurship components, as well as various ways that service providers and innovation companies could serve this industry. How is it similar to licensed operators? How is it, what opportunities exist here because of the deregulation and that don't exist elsewhere? So how we start off everything, I'm going to allow each panelist to introduce themselves for a couple minutes, explain how they got here, what they're doing in the space. Then there'll be some moderator Q&A, and sooner, rather than later, I invite everybody to chime in and ask questions for this esteemed panel. So we're going to start with Allie Jubiler. Allie, good morning. Please share a little bit about yourself with 1871 and the Cannabis Innovation Lab.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, first of all, and congrats on all the awesome work that you're doing, Brad and Marcy and the whole team. I'm Allie Jublier. I am a lawyer. I'm also an operator, a regulated cannabis operator. I've been practicing law for 25 years and recently went back to sort of big law after 18 years. The last time I was in a law firm, things were very different than they are today. And I've joined Benesch, which in their cannabis practice group to help sort of further build out that group. Also hoping to move into the psychedelics legal space and really become an expert in that space, which was something I couldn't do really as a solo practitioner because of the time and money it takes to, become an expert in a new legal area. So I'm practicing law and I've been doing that for 20 something years. And in 2019, I became the general counsel of Revolution, a cannabis company here in Illinois. And that was sort of my intro into the sort of, business world of cannabis. And after spending 2 years there and then working for a company called AeroPay as their outside GC for a while, I got the harebrained idea to start my own cannabis business in New Mexico. Long story there, but basically I have a family connection to New Mexico. And that's why in New Mexico, I also knew it was an unlimited license market. And if I applied for licenses, I wouldn't get tied up in 3.5 years of litigation the way we did in Illinois. So I started a cannabis business, which has now been operational for about 2 years. We just had our second harvest. We're an outdoor farm in New Mexico and manufacture, no retail. In that capacity as a regulated cannabis operator, I also decided recently, within the last year, to go into the hemp D9 space with one of my products, and also working on a beverage, which also involves hemp D9. So yeah, so that's kind of my story, and it's great to be here with everybody. I can't wait to dig in.
Great to be here with you. Dr. Jennifer Weiss, say hello and a little bit about yourself to the cohort.
Good morning, everyone. So my background is an industrial and organizational psychologist. I've never worked retail. My specialties were always in the leadership consulting realm. And a few years back, when I was trying to navigate the CBD world and struggled to find products that I was comfortable with, I realized there was a need for something like what I've created here at Cubbington's Cabinet. So Cubbington's is, it's really created to focus on wellness. And our mission is to really improve the quality of life for people and pets through creating a place where people can trust that we've done a lot of the vetting for them. We focus a lot on education and empowerment of our customers, along with our own line of select few CBD products. We also carry carefully curated products that we've thoroughly vetted from innovative companies, primarily led by women, BIPOC, other historically marginalized communities. I'm able to come live from the shop this morning because we don't open for another couple of hours. Just for context, I'm in a neighborhood called Roscoe Village in Chicago. And if you followed the viral story about the rat hole, that we're just about a block away from that. The other risk, so I've got Cubbington sleeping behind me, and you never know when that big bear might come poke his head up. But the other risk is I'm right in front of our front windows, and there's a lot of people pilgrimaging. It's like lines down the block.
For the rat hole, I love it.
A rat hole, yeah.
Oh my God.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you. And thanks for, the rat hole story is for online media, it's the gift that keeps on giving from a clickability perspective. Christopher Lackner, say hello and welcome.
Thanks so much, pardon. I got a little bit of dry desert air in my system, I just realized. I'm Christopher Lackner. I'm the president and executive director and founder and whatever of the Hemp-Beverage Alliance. We are a 501c6 trade association for hemp beverages, which is to say cannabinoid infused drinks that in which the cannabinoids are derived from hemp as opposed to marijuana. Previously, I was a co-founder of a CBD beverage product. I sold my interest to my partner last year and realized there was that this industry was booming and that beverage in particular is a big opportunity for these cannabinoids. And so I've been turning my attention full time to this endeavor. The mission statement of the Hemp Beverage Alliance is pretty simple: to have our drinks next to beer, wine, and White Claw. Anywhere beer, wine, and White Claw go, we believe that a low dose hemp-infused product, a drink, should be allowed to be as well. You can learn more about us at hempbeveragealliance.org, and you can click on, there's some buttons there if you want to join or get more information.
Thank you, Chris. So, most of the time in the year plus 2 years almost now, actually, that we've been contemplating and running Cannabis Innovation Lab, we've focused primarily on, the state licensed industries, and a lot of the entrepreneurs and operators here come from a licensed perspective. So some of my questions, including the first one, is going to be mindful of that, where we're going to have a little bit of a comparison between the two. And Allie, I wanted to start with you because your background at Revolution, your interest in obtaining state licensure in New Mexico, Illinois, etc. If you had it to do over again, starting in 2024, would you pick one lane in terms of, Delta 9 hemp-derived space or the license lane, or would you continue to try to do both simultaneously, which is what you're doing right now?
I've been thinking about this question since you mentioned it to me. It's a really hard one. I think, and I was thinking about it, I think it actually depends a little bit on the product that you want to launch. And maybe this is sort of too digging into the minutia, but if you're a flower person and you're wanting to create, like if I'm sitting here today and I'm talking to somebody and they're saying, I want to do joints, I want to do flower, I want to do moon rocks, like whatever, right? I'm going to tell you, probably go get a license, go get a regulated license from a cannabis regulated state. If you're interested in gummies and beverages and other products, then I'm probably going to tell you, don't bother and go down the hemp route. If I was sitting here right now today talking to people about it, I think that's what I would say.
Excellent. And then Jennifer, had you ever contemplated, or did you ever go for a license, or had Cubbington's been completely predicated on your current business model today?
So to answer this question, I have to say I came into this industry pretty naive. It was right around the time that legalization was happening. The CRTA here was written, which defined Illinois' rules around cannabis. And I actually signed the lease for this place around that time, thinking, oh, it's well set up in case I want to go for a license. Aha! I quickly learned, little old self-funded me, would never have been able to pass the strict requirements here in Illinois, in terms of the way the process went for licenses. Being a woman and just a woman, I would never have gotten enough points on the social equity portions of the scale. So it was rather easy to game for large, powerful forces, and they did. It's now evening out. But to get back to your original question, I wasn't sure I really wanted to do that because I was concerned about being pigeonholed, because our whole model is wellness. And I'm really interested in low dose THC products that have other things, other cannabinoids, other useful plant-based ingredients, not just in the cannabis realm. And with the way the model works here in Illinois, you can't mix that and be profitable. That's just not going to happen. So if I were to start again, I would still go the hemp route.
Good to know. And Christopher, in terms of the membership of the Alliance, to what degree, do you have members that play in both spaces?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I do want to say that starting with hemp on the low dose side is certainly a good angle there that you have. The membership, we have about 160 members in our organization. About 50% of them are brands and about 50% are supply chain and service providers. Of the brands, there are a significant number that started out in cannabis. Some of the names you'll recognize, some you don't. But they are either all straddling both the marijuana hemp side or completely converting over. The unique thing about Beverage is that they don't sell in dispensaries, either low dose and the high dose perhaps a little bit more, but the low dose certainly. And the product as a form is just not conducive to a dispensary environment. We can talk about that a little bit later. But the short answer is there are a lot of folks, and we get calls, weekly of some of the major brands that have started and maybe gotten their brand identity in the dispensaries that are now moving at least their beverages into the hemp side.
And from a consumer perspective, when you're licensed by the state, depending on the state, that there's a lot of requirements from a product efficacy standpoint, from an education standpoint, and everyone here is operating, great businesses, but there's obviously a lot of variance. What can you do, starting Jennifer, to make sure that you're communicating the quality and the efficacy of your product when, a lot of the stuff could be available anywhere by operators that might not go through the same hoops that you are?
I think the most important thing that we do is everything we possibly can to simplify things for our customers. It's hard enough to be able to navigate how complicated, just talking about what CBD is, much less if you're talking about Delta-8, THCV, all these different cannabinoids. So careful vetting so that we have, really thoughtfully curated products that makes it even easier to educate on. And we're able at this point to really personalize discussions with each and every customer. In fact, that's our big challenge as we scale. How do we keep doing this when we, go beyond a small team in a single location? How do we do that online? In some ways, online could be easier, but you're not able to personalize. So we really focus on continuing conversations and education here within the shop amongst staff, and then meeting the customer where they're at and personalizing the education, being really honest about what we do and we don't know, because it's so early with these things and research is just opening up. So, we make sure we're also not giving any false promises. But But, you know, I think that what's really important to stress here today is that smart regulatory, new regulations around hemp that are reasonable and thoughtful, that will lock in some of the types of things that we do, because not everyone's educating, let's be honest. And it's hard to even know enough to be able to educate.
And Christopher, you have, several dozen members. I mean, how can you, what supports does your alliance and association have, to help amplify some of the consumer education components that maybe individually your members don't have the resources to provide?
Yeah, well, the Alliance, does a lot of work in developing materials to educate everybody up and down the supply chain. It's not just the end consumer that needs to be educated on it, but it's also the frontline retailer and the distributor as well. We're actually developing a Cicerone or sommelier style programming right now where retailers, frontline retailers, managers, et cetera, can basically get certified by the HBA to be able to, to be educated, at various levels as to the products that we sell. And our hope is that those folks will be like, get the HBA certification pin for their lapels, so that when a consumer comes to them at a liquor store or a grocery store saying, hey, I want to learn more about THC beverages, they know that they're getting educated by a frontline person who is not just saying stuff that he saw on the internet. So that's one of the other things. The other thing that's unique to Beverage, or perhaps not unique to Beverage, but something we certainly amplify, is that there's a lot of real estate on an individual can to provide information to the consumer at the point of purchase. We strongly recommend high visibility of the milligram count and the type of cannabinoids that are in there. Most, if not all, have a QR code to a certificate of analysis, so that a person right at the point of purchase can take a look to see that it's been tested and that the milligram counts are accurate and that it's free of any pesticides or contaminants. And then similar to FDA labeling in terms of other inert ingredients, labeling so that sugar count, serving size, et cetera. The cans also have warning labels for, impairment, pregnancy, and other 21 plus type labeling to really kind of educate the consumer, just as if they were picking up a can of beer for the first time.
Allie, I saw your hand up.
Well, I actually meant to clap, Christopher, certification. And then I was like, oh, that's a raised hand. No, I mean, listening to all of it, I agree with everything. I think the challenge is exactly, I think Jennifer sort of touched on it, is like, are you marketing direct to consumer online? Are you expanding brick and mortar? How are you reaching these people when advertising is basically impossible? You go on Instagram and you mention cannabis, weed, THC, selling a picture of a flower, some amorphous thing, you get shadow banned. Facebook similarly is even worse than Instagram. LinkedIn, amazingly, is cannabis's, and hemp's best friend, because they are the most cannabis friendly. They don't care if you post pictures for the most part. I've seen a couple people get tagged, shut down here and there, but reinstated.
Did you get my text? I tried to change your number in my phone.
I think someone's needs to get mute, please.
Yeah,
I got him.
All right, cool, thank you. I was like, is that me? But I think it's tough. And, Jennifer, listening to her and seeing, and I know about Cubbington's a beautiful store. And my challenge was when I moved into the hemp D9 space with cookie dough, edible cookie dough, which we did with regulated cannabis in New Mexico that was made, distillate made from our farm, from material from our farm, and then infused into the cookie dough and made in New Mexico in a regulated cannabis licensed facility, wanting to then move outside of just New Mexico. I ended up visiting some, I call them smoke shops, head shops, I don't know kind of what the right terminology is. But places that seemed, like they'd be great, places that sold other kinds of pastries and things like that, where I thought, the cookie dough would do really well. And honestly, I had a pretty not great experience with the three different groups, you know, that I ended up speaking to. And I would say, like, at a macro level, it did feel very like, you know, everything they were producing in-house. I'm sure they're testing and all these things. It felt very like, like you couldn't kind of get into that group without them wanting to like marry. Like, it was like, can we date before we get married? There were all these conversations about big partnerships and things. And I was just like, I just want to sell you some cookie dough to have in your store and see how it goes. So I didn't have a great experience with that. And I kind of tabled it and said, okay, let's just focus on direct to consumer. But direct to consumer is really tough. I know there's a beverage brand called Happy that I love. It's a THC seltzer. They've had a lot of success with direct to consumer. And I don't know what the secret ingredient was or what they did, but they've had a lot of great revenue coming from direct to consumer, but it's tough. I just don't know, you know, that's the rub. It's like, where is my market for this? I know where my market is. I just don't really know how to reach them, if that makes sense.
Sure. So one of the great tensions, obviously, in any all parts of the cannabis plant are quasi legal. In terms of the hemp-derived THC aspect, you know, so much regulation or potential regulation at the federal level and within each state, you know, is threatened. You know, I mean, at any given time in Illinois, I think it was about 9 months ago, you know, there was worries that, you know, a cease and desist could come by, and, you know, within a month you needed to be, you know, completely out of the business. What can operators, starting with Chris, do from a self-regulation standpoint, you know, including your alliance, but in addition to your alliance, to regulate responsibly, so the legislators and regulators, you know, do not encroach upon your space in such punitive ways?
Yeah, and that's one of the big challenges that we all have in this industry because of this gray area that we are in, and that there are low barriers to entry for a lot of the form factors. A person can manufacture gummies and have them in a vape shop in, you know, in a week and a half. And with the lack of regulation and easy access to those products, that does pose a significant danger. And as a result, all cannabinoids and all hemp products get lumped into those bad actors. And that's really where the regulatory or the shutdown concerns are. You know, to develop a beverage one doesn't bootleg cans of soda, right? You can't be selling these out of the back of your car. You know, these are inherently require sophistication in production and in quality controlled environments. You know, canning lines just don't pop up in back alleys, right? And so, you know, our industry as beverages are inherently, you know, developed, designed, produced, and stored in a more safe environment than potentially some of the other form factors. But getting back to the point about what we can do to assuage concerns about the industry, it is really siding with regulation, siding with taxation and transparency, and all understanding that these bad actors that are out there that are making these very high milligram products that replicate candies that are selling willingly and openly to folks that are underage, that are you know, not having proper labeling, taxation, and you know, record keeping. That is the true enemy of the industry, and is a true enemy of society. And we stand very firmly behind the fact that bad actors, just like if somebody was making bootleg beer and putting it on the shelves, you know, and selling it, or bootleg, you know, peanut butter sandwiches, like there's you know, there's the regulated side, and there's the good actors and the bad actors, and we all know that one bad actor spoils it for the other 99 good actors. So I think all working together to promote that we are responsible in our industry, and also standing with legislators and law enforcement against the bad actors, is a real good key to success. Those folks are going to make some money on the fly, and then hopefully get, you know, washed out as this industry matures. But right now, I think that you know, we are roped in with until we provide clarity to legislators and regulators that there's the good hemp people and the bad hemp people. We're just going to need to continue that communication and education.
And Jennifer, this can be, you're operating your own independent business, but you're obviously very active in the space. I mean, how do you justify the ROI of getting involved in advocacy and self-regulation while you also have to, make sure that your own business's needs are met?
This has been a struggle from day one. I had no idea how challenging it would be. I mean, on top of how hard, like what Ali was talking about earlier, there's so many things that are a tax, essentially. I pay more for insurance. I pay more for my point of sales. I don't have access to bank loans. It goes on and on and on. And then marketing is cut. What's the balance? And for us, I think our value proposition is so much about the quality that's why we're still alive. Whereas so many other retail shops in Chicago doing this sort of thing have shut down. So in terms of regulation, and I definitely want to talk a little bit more about specifics to do with that later, but I can say there are a lot of us who care a lot about this, and we talk about it, and we're trying to be proactive, and Cubbington's, we put together our own pledge. This is what we think people should be doing in the hemp space. Of course, ours is really long. I printed it out. It's very detailed, but we worked with a group that's broader, and it's a much larger umbrella, and worked on a hemp pledge for Illinois that's really reasonable, and it's supporting thoughtful regulation that's not creating barriers to entry, and it's ensuring public safety, and also promoting social equity. I think these are things that we all stand for. And so a whole bunch of different hemp businesses of all kinds signed this. And I would say it doesn't really matter, though, in the long term, because self-regulation alone, I think we all know, you just can't trust people to do it. I think there has to be regulation long term, and hopefully we can get ahead of it.
And Ali, so, wearing your attorney's hat, wearing your operator's hat,
Yeah.
you've been like the Farm Bill from 2018 obviously allowed this industry to exist. We were waiting on an update from the 2023 Farm Bill that's obviously in motion. If you could regulate, what specific things would you put into the 2023-24 Farm Bill based on what you've learned as it relates to CBD and hemp?
Yeah. And I'll answer that in 1 second. I just wanted to say one other thing about the legitimacy. I think that it's really important that regulated cannabis operators are now getting into this space. And I think this is what I say because now I'm talking to other companies. Like I was just meeting with an edible company, and they use regulated cannabis. They're in one state, and they're like, Hemp-D9 stuff isn't even really like on their radar, and they have a fantastic product. And so now I'm trying to convince them, make the exact same product with, Hemp-D9 distillate so that you can reach a broader audience. And I think 1906, I don't know if people are familiar with 1906, they just got into the space. I mean, the first movers were the beverages, right? And the beverages have really laid like sort of the foundation for a compliant Hemp-D9, exactly what Christopher was saying. Like, I'm working on a beverage right now. I've been working on it for months. I've visited co-packers in Minnesota. I've been to hemp processors in California that actually, make the distillate and the different cannabinoids. And the more we're used to working under incredibly strict rules, right? And so the more of us that embrace this space, I think the more legitimacy hemp D9 and D8 and other cannabinoid products, will have. So I think that's really important, that more of us are sort of moving into that space as regulated operators. But The things that I would put into the bill, obvious for me, like, you know, the issue of kids being able to get their hands on this is like, you know, very close to my heart. I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. And it infuriates me, you know, and my niece in Ohio has come home with a bag of, you know, we walked into a store and got a bag of gummies that were several hundred milligrams and brought it home to my, you know, I mean, it's crazy, right? Like these stores there are bad actors. So obviously restrictions around carting and children, you know, access, you know, packaging, same things we have in regulated cannabis. We're not allowed to make it look like candy. We're not allowed to put fun animals on our packaging. We're not allowed to have super bright, you know, colors and things like that. So similar stuff, dosage limits, you know, I think are probably a good idea. And just, you know, general sanitation, like that's kind of what I worry about with a lot of these operators. Like to your point, like is somebody making gummies in their garage, sticking them in a Mylar bag, slapping on a label and then selling them? Possibly. We don't know, you know, there's nobody telling them that they have to do it a certain way or don't have to do it a certain way. You know, the FDA is pretty much, you know, thrown up their hands at CBD, right? Which doesn't bode well for the rest of, if they can't even figure out if CBD is safe, right? If they're still literally 3.5 years or 4 years later sitting there saying, and literally someone said this, an FDA person said this at one of the conferences when asked, no, we cannot confirm that CBD is safe for like human consumption. Like period. And then went on and on about all the different things that CBD harms that CBD can do to humans. It's crazy. But, you know, there has to be, I think it has to be regulated similarly to cannabis. I would like to see it be a little less onerous. You know, what cannabis operators have had to go through to get licensed and get real estate and get permitted and get up and running. And, you know, some of it is unnecessary and burdensome. So I'd like to see, you know, cannabis regulations sort of light, if you will, at least built in. That's my my spiel. Christopher, I think you were going to say something too. You had unless you were clapping for me. Did you have your hand raised or were you clapping?
I was doing a lot of clapping, but mostly it was amplification of some of the ideas that you had. I just wanted to make sure that the barriers to entry issue that was mentioned, I think is a very important thing, particularly when we talk about folks that have been left out of this opportunity. Start up a dispensary or anything on the regulated side is multi-millions of dollars, and multi-millions of dollars usually come from the usual suspects. One can get into the hemp, you know, this is the true American pathway to normalization and legalization, and that these are mom and pop opportunities that present themselves on the hemp side as opposed to corporate entities on the marijuana side. So, you know, a person with a dream, a business plan, and a couple $100,000 can really get a good program up and running, as opposed to what our current model is on the marijuana side.
Yeah, that's
Jennifer.
true. Yeah, I just want to buttress what's been said, that I do think the Farm Bill benefits us when it's broad, and to do a lot of the more detailed regulation at the state level. It's probably more realistic. I think we've known since 2014 that there's issues with the definitions in the Farm Bill. But the good news is that if you really look at that language, it seems to support the growth of all hemp, support innovation in the industry. You know, that there's benefits to keeping it really broad. It's just being more deliberate with definitions.
Let's shift a little bit more toward entrepreneurship scalability. Jennifer, I'm going to put it back to you in terms of, you know, how you're joining the Innovation Lab in part to refine and really jumpstart your e-commerce model. Talk a little bit about things that independent CBD retailers can do to scale right now, and the things that you're investing in.
So for us, I think I mentioned a bit earlier, it's looking beyond just cannabis and cannabinoids. So holistic health, being ready for those psychedelic mushrooms, but certainly functional mushrooms are on our shelves right now. Looking for a lot of what excites me are innovative blends. The other big area that I think is important is partnerships. So we don't know what the framework is going to look like for many of us in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So one of the great things about being in the lab is seeing these early stage companies that are actually creating solutions for my customers, and they might not be ready yet, but if I'm working with them now, there can be some really beautiful synergies. I can say I work, we've been partnering with Acute on Chronic, for example, who is in this, Rebecca's in this cohort. So they're clinicians and they're consultants for health. And when something is a complicated medical issue or is beyond our knowledge, we refer. And it's good for us too, for a multitude of reasons. They'll send people back this way for products that we carry, but our customers also get, they get a discount when they go there. But I would say the most important thing, and I'm just gonna get on a soapbox here for the next few minutes in case I don't have another opportunity. I think the most important thing is to know what is going on with regulation and be engaged in it. Brad was talking earlier about a big scare that happened with the last major session here in Springfield. There's huge stuff going on right now. So for the hemp space, people should know that there's here in Chicago, one of the city council people has put through an ordinance that would ban any hemp-derived cannabinoids with a package of any more than 2.5 milligrams of THC, of Delta-9 THC. Right now, there's a bill being pushed forward by a representative named LaShawn Ford, who has been advocating for responsible hemp legislation. And he was told by the hemp regulatory body just recently that they want to cap total package at 5 milligrams. So everyone's thinking about Delta-8, Delta-9. No one's realizing that even cuts out full spectrum CBD. Federally legal, everyday full spectrum CBD is cut out in that situation. If you're not engaged in these conversations, then you can't plan for your business. And we're figuring it out. And it's not like there's a group of experts right now that, it's not like academia. It's a different world here when it comes to politics. You gotta be noisy. So thanks. I needed to get that in sometime today.
And that's specific in the Illinois front. Chris, you're fighting this battle presumably in all 50 states. I mean, so
Florida right now. Florida's got some major stuff up, right, Chris?
Yeah, that's these things crop up almost overnight, and
Okay.
we do what we can to keep an eye on them. I do want to say that Illinois does have a working group addressing this very issue, and if anybody ping me afterwards if you're in Illinois, and we can get you into that coalition group that's trying to work against that Alderman Hopkins idea in Chicago and in support of what LaShawn Ford is doing down in Springfield. I'm gonna have myself a quick cough and answer the next question. In terms of what's happening around the country, yeah, there are varying degrees of crisis and opportunity. We have a crowdsourced group of attorneys and public affairs professionals throughout this country that are keeping an eye on these. Some of the packaging requirements, some of the milligram requirements are not only egregious, but confounding and contrary to public health best practices. We see legislation that says that you can't say that there's cannabis in the product, which, on the label, which, is a disservice to the person that's consuming it. We've seen legislation that says you can't have a marijuana leaf on it, when the ASTM best practices for warning labels is a marijuana leaf. And so a lot of it is educating legislators and these regulators to be like, just don't take a a sledgehammer and just, confound us with these egregious regulations that the bad actors are going to skirt anyways. Create a framework that is, relatively consistent across state lines as well. Work with your other, the states and to create a consistent regulatory pathway and a consistent strategy, so that for the benefit of the consumer. And I think this is one of the things that gets lost with this, is that, I mean, it's incredibly difficult for us to be making different packaging that changes almost monthly, state by state, but it does an incredible disservice to the consumer, who is, the consumers cross state lines as well. And just like you go to McDonald's in Arizona, Alabama, or Maine, and it's the same cheeseburger, you should be able to go to those states and have the same, reasonable experience with your hemp consumption. And so, yeah, short answer is this: it's a continual whack-a-mole thing. This is what we did with the CBD industry, 2 years ago, and are still doing. We do have coalitions across this country that are working in, Massachusetts, Florida, Ohio, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota of all places, and Illinois and Arizona. So if anybody has interest in those states or any other states, we have coalitions forming.
Great.
So,
So,
Brad, just to add on to that really quickly, one thing that I think is great, and that Chris, can provide along with other, reputable hemp associations, is that for someone like me or other people wanting to get into the space, it's kind of like what I started with Cannabis, right? Like, who are the compliant, responsible, sophisticated, business hemp manufacturers, right? Like, who are the people that I would want to go to if I was looking for a new manufacturer for my cookie dough? Like, I don't know, and I have to figure all of that out, kind of on my own. There are these awesome resources now, thankfully, as the market has matured. But, a lot of the manufacturers and the hemp processors are leaning into compliance, right? Like, you see GMP certified hemp processing facilities, like the one that I visited in California. Like, that's the, those are the real deal. So, but it's not always easy to find who those people are. And, like anything, you get in bed with the wrong person, it can be disastrous. So, it's great that we're starting to get sophisticated enough in this space that, we can sort of build a library of compliant businesses and operators and manufacturers and processors, that we can go to when we want to get into the business, basically.
of course, getting into any business requires funding, and I'd be interested to hear, Allie, starting with you, because you obviously took a number of routes to fund Dynamic Jack, including crowdsourcing and everything else. What's the value proposition to investors for a hemp product relative to your experience, starting a licensed operation in New Mexico? You might be on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, can you say that again? So you're talking the benefit of doing the hemp versus the...
Yeah, and the value proposition to investors and the story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the value prop is just a wider audience, a much wider audience of customers to pull from. The challenge, again, is how do you get to them? Is it D2C? Is it brick and mortar? Is it education? I don't know. But obviously, when I'm talking to, like, for example, the edible group that I mentioned, I want them to have more money. I want them to have more revenue, and I want them to get their amazing product out to the masses, and not just be stuck, in one state. And I think that in regulated cannabis, the game right now is really mostly about branding. Right? Like, there's innovation, obviously, with accessories and the cannabinoids and everything else. But at the end of the day, and I'm not a CPG expert or a marketing expert, but I think a lot of people will tell you, as this market matures, it's going to, the branding is really going to matter. So I think a lot of people are focusing on branding and asset light, right? Because of the financial burden. you know, I think at the end of the day, it's just getting, you know, we have to stay alive. Like as regulated cannabis operators, I mean, Jennifer said it, even as a non-regulated cannabis operator, we have to deal with this sort of cannabis tax. Everything we do is more expensive, everything, the banking, the systems, and it's all inferior too. So we're, you know, it's like we're handicapped and we're paying more for it at the same time. You know what I mean? And so if you can move outside of that, right, with a hemp derived product and, you know, make a business for yourself. I mean, it's literally like what I said in this article I wrote. It's if you can't beat them, join them. We didn't beat hemp. We tried. The regulated cannabis, MSOs, the operators, we all tried, right? I mean, Jennifer was talking about the politics. You know, a lot of the efforts to shut down Hemp-D9 are, of course, led by regulated cannabis operators because it's another competitor. And we've had it. We've had it with competitors. We've had it with all of the, you know, barriers and things that have been put in front of us to be successful. And we're, you know, looking around, you know, and like, great, now we've got another competitor and they don't have to do anything that we have to do, you know? So it's, if you, at some point, if you can't beat them, join them. And, you know, I think it was Chris or Jennifer were saying earlier, you know, the legislators pass these laws, but they don't really know what they mean because unless you have like a working group or people like Jennifer or Christopher advise, they didn't know that what they were, you know, people argue about this, but I don't think they knew they were unleashing, you know, intoxicating cannabinoids into the you know, the world when they made the Farm Bill. That was certainly not Mitch McConnell's intent. So, you know, but we have to. I don't see a choice for regulated cannabis. We are not getting the relief from banking. We are not, you know, right, rescheduling is on the horizon, but that's still a long way off. Every month is a battle and a challenge to keep our heads above water. I think if you have a, you know, you have a duty to a fiduciary duty to your investors, your shareholders, to pursue any reasonable business line to keep your business alive. And I'm saying this as a lawyer who is very uncomfortable with the idea that, you know, something like a loophole created, you know, what, a multi-billion-dollar business. That is not something as a lawyer that I am comfortable with, but it is the reality that we are living in. And it is my job, you know, as an advocate for my clients, when they come to me and they say to me, as now I'm putting my lawyer hat on, right? Like they say to me, I want to go into this business line. Can I do this? You know, and the ambiguity is everywhere. And so it's up to interpretation. We're all, like Jennifer said, you know, kind of figuring it out on our own. We don't have the benefit of years of research because the US wouldn't allow that. You know, we go to places like Israel for our research. So we're really, you know, we're really kind of doing this for the first time. And we're all pioneers. And I just think we have an obligation. I mean, I walk around every day feeling the weight and pressure of investor money that I took to get this business going. And like a lot of operators and newbies and entrepreneurs, I made a lot of mistakes. And, you know, I want my business to be successful, and I'm going to do anything in my power, anything legal in my power to get there, period, full stop.
Thank you. Chris, how much money are you seeing, the capital you're seeing coming into the space? I mean, it's been, you know, shall we say, economically distressed in the licensed THC for the last 18 months or so. You know, where are you seeing capital coming from? And, you know, is my assumption, our assumption is your members are not as impacted by that. But can you shed light on this?
Yeah, we we share similar pains. And I think I'd rather refocus where is the interest, not so much where is the money. And I think that there's a lot of activation or latent energy in our category that is something that everybody should consider. To everyone's point, yeah, I mean, the MSOs and the folks that went into the marijuana side, you know, there's a lot of high upfront costs and there's a lot of challenges of like, how do we appeal, you know, now there becomes protectionism of an oligopoly because you've got a lot of investor monies that are waiting for a return. And we certainly sympathize that, but we think of the hemp industry as kind of like Uber coming into a taxi cab city where, you know, taxi cabs are a high oligopoly with barriers to entry and some would argue a, you know, pretty substandard level of service. Uber comes in unregulated with a new business model that is in a regulatory gray area. that captures the hearts and minds of the consumer, and then the regulations kind of get back-ended into that industry. And so we see that kind of happening on the hemp side. In terms of money coming in, yeah, there's still everybody's, everybody wants to be the second one in the pool. Nobody wants to be the first. And we talk to venture capitalist groups a lot of times, and they're waiting for a more regulatory clarity before they throw their money into any of these companies. They've obviously been a little hesitant after their experience on the dispensary or on the marijuana side. But I do want to talk about the interest, which is the bigger thing, at least on the beverage side. So I'm at the Wine and Spirits Associations trade show that's going to start up next week. 10% of the trade show floor is going to be hemp beverages. We have an entire, there's an entire day's worth of, not days worth, but there's probably 6 hours worth of programming for hemp beverages. We have meetings with the largest distributors in the nation, the ones that carry your Budweiser and your White Claws, et cetera, that we are meeting with. There is immense interest in this from the alcohol distribution category for a couple of reasons, some that you know, some that you probably don't. One is that, as you know, or probably know, alcohol is in reasonable decline these days. Kids aren't drinking as much as cannabis, marijuana products become more acceptable as a healthy and non-counterculture alternative. There are a couple of big houses that have suffered some marketing missteps that have caused some actual significant decline in their bottom line. And the distributors, without getting into great detail, there's something called the 3-tier system in America, in which if you make a drink, you can't ship a drink, and if you ship a drink, you can't sell a drink, right? Those are the 3 tiers of the 3-tier system. Recent change, the distributors who make up a significant portion of our economy are continually feel threatened by the removal of a 3-tier system as craft beer and D2C has happened. But this is a savior for that 3-tier system. In the absence of a strong regulatory framework, the distributors actually fill the role not only as a quality control backstop between manufacturer and retailer, but also as a tax gatherer. Distributors, the old saying is that we are not in the distribution business, we are in the tax collection business when it comes to distribution. And I think that is something that is really going to capture the eyes and attention of a lot of the folks that are very familiar with and very comfortable with and very eager to move heavy cans of water and to age-gated places. So I can't say come over here, there's a giant pile of money for you. But I can say is that there is a big pile of opportunity and interest, because just like, we're not the only ones that are upset with onerous regulations and onerous and unnecessary barriers to our success. The alcohol side has been doing this for years, and they want to, they want something as streamlined as we do for sure. So that's all I got.
Excellent. So in our remaining few minutes, again, reminding any questions for the panelists, and please speak up. But I wanted to get an indication, starting with Jennifer, about advice you would have for digital, ancillary, other service providers that are in the lab, in terms of what you're looking for in terms of services and how they might get overall traction in the market.
Yeah, I've been so excited by some of the pitches and the things I've been learning about some of these companies. Gosh, they provide great solutions to all of our problems, except it's not for us. It's for the dispensary world, and we could use it too over here. It'll have to be a little different, and be able to be customized. But there's so much opportunity for retailers like me. I need solutions to all of these problems. Like Ali was saying, some of my options are so bad. And I'm lucky. I mean, I come from a privileged spot that somehow I've been able to have great banking, and I I've learned how to navigate through a lot of these things in ways that, you know, if you don't have a lot of connections or certain background or education, you're never going to be able to know how to do it, or be able to access the best options. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for ancillary services, you know, yeah, focus on solutions for us.
Allie, would you concur?
Yeah, I mean, but it's a money issue. There's a ton of great solutions. None of us can afford them.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are built for cannabis or hemp or, you know, are fantastic. I mean, I've seen incredible programs and softwares, you know, and for cultivation, for example. I can't afford any of them. You know, banking, you know, I worked for AeroPay for a year and some change. I did, and which was such a great experience because I didn't know, you know, I had been general counsel of Revolution, but I hadn't done like a deep dive into the financial space. And learning that and then being an operator, yeah, I got a bank. I went to, you know, Partner Colorado Credit Union, Safe Harbor. They were like one of the very first banks in Colorado to ever do, you know, cannabis banking. But guess what? It was $300 a month to pay for that account. Then it goes up to $500 a month. I know people that pay $1,500 a month to have the privilege to store their money at a bank. And it's untenable. It's just untenable. And then you end up having to use these workarounds, like Jennifer said, that are gray. And it's hard. So yes, I would say, of course, and I do think things will start moving again, you know, if rescheduling actually like starts moving this year, and if the DEA, you know, accepts, even if the DEA accepts HHS's recommendation, even if there's administrative hearings in the comment period and, you know, litigation potentially, I think, you know, that will be monumental and it will start money moving again. But I think of it more honestly, Brad, as trickle down economics. The people who are going to benefit immediately are the MSOs, right? From the tax relief of 280E. And maybe with that, they decide, okay, it's time to start acquiring again, right? Because M&A activity has been down, obviously. But it's going to take a while, you know, for people like Jennifer and me and other operators to sort of see the benefits of that, I think. And in the meantime, we can't afford a lot of the solutions. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but that's just the honest truth. So I think what we can do that doesn't cost money are things like what Christopher is doing. You know, we need to just keep talking and working together and moving the needle and educating people and getting regulated cannabis operators into the space. I really believe that the more regulated cannabis operators that embrace, you know, the hemp D9 and D8 and cannabinoid and CBD space, the more legitimacy, you know, the industry will have, and the more comfort legislators, I think, will have too, because they know we've been living under these, you know, sort of strict regulations for our whole existence. And that's what the world that we want to continue to live in. We don't want a world, you know, regulated cannabis operators do not want a world where we can have a free for all and make hemp-derived products in our garage. That is not how we roll, you know? So I think that's the answer right now until the money starts flowing.
Excellent. Christopher, you've been very active in the chat. Thank you for all the resources you provided on the way out. Any particular pain points that your members are feeling that a group of innovation entrepreneurs can provide?
Yeah, we're all about the pain points here, right? And we're all about pain point resolution. So just a quick pitch, go to hempbeveragealliance.org. You can click on the join and it'll just shoot me an email. We can talk, but we have a list of co-packers, distributors, ingredient providers, banking, insurance, payment processing, best practices in advertising, online advertising. A lot of guys have been very, very successful in moving outside of the barriers of the internet to get to their consumers directly in a D2C way. That's why Happy and other groups like Breeze, BREZ, are just absolutely crushing it. They've got that strategy dialed in. We can get you guys connected with those so you can get a more direct and personal relationship with your customers online.
Beautiful. And maybe we take it into overtime. Rachel and Olivia, we have a couple of questions. Can we run a little bit over? Cole.
Thomas had his hand up before me. I'd love to go, but Thomas won't.
Thomas, go for it.
Yeah. So real quick, does the panel, do you foresee any oversaturation in the market with, THC and hemp products becoming more online, being able to go to the neighborhood pantry and, get all these gummies? What could cause oversaturation and maybe some consumer backlash?
That's a good question.
Well, I think a lot of the backlash is happening because of all of the vape shops, because of challenges, or you can go to a gas station and buy all kinds of stuff and it's not well vetted. And there's been terrible news stories about kids that have ended up in the hospital here in the suburbs of Illinois because of some bad product, or they overdid it with the Delta 8. I think it's already oversaturated. It's just with poor quality.
Right. I agree.
Thank you.
Cole.
So I was worried my question might be a little bit too Illinois specific, but after thinking, it might apply to all others, and it was kind of touched on in this discussion. It seems like there's a consensus that issue with high schoolers and that type of stuff is not what we want as people trying to be responsible in the space. And as somebody, I think it was Jennifer maybe pointed out earlier, many hemp operators came together in Illinois to agree that, we should be taxed, we should be tested, we should be labeled if we're going to be selling intoxicating cannabinoids. And I hosted a debate around this subject, and it seemed to shift from that health concern to a debate around limited licensing and open licensing, and the things that Chris was saying earlier about it being the true American pathway to legalization with no barriers to entry is seen as something that would dilute the market. So again, not to get too Illinois specific, but I do think this would be something that is going to play out as social equity is being paired with the idea of market share. In other words, don't dilute the market, because then that decreases the valuation of the license and everything else, right? So I guess my question is, how do you plan to combat that given everything you love about it? Because it seems like everything you love is a direct challenge to that system. And I realize that's
such a good question. No, Cole, I think it's a great question. I didn't mean to jump in. Brad, do you want me to talk?
Okay.
No, I think it's a really great question. And I think it's not the point that I struggle with too, because I know how hard people worked, the social equity applicants and the groups that put licenses together, and they got tied up for years while the MSOs just got bigger, right? And now you've got yet another competitor on the market that could put all these people out of business, to the extent they're even, halfway standing themselves up, given everything that's happened. I don't know exactly what the answer is, other than I said this to you, Cole, when you and I have talked, the plant is called Cannabis Sativa L. That is the name of the plant, whether it's hemp or whether it's regulated cannabis. And we've just been battling each other for so long. I think we have to lock arms, and then we have to figure out how can we benefit one another, right? How can we, the hemp, we being the people that are in the hemp space, make sure that we are not tanking all the social equity applicants and groups that work so hard to get licenses and are trying to get up and running. Maybe it's partnering with them. I have all kinds of opinions, of course, about, whether these products should or could be sold together in the same store, right? And I think there's other things too, Cole, you and I have talked about the outdoor growing in Illinois, hemp growers grow outside in Illinois, right? And maybe there is a way for the hemp growers to work with the legislators to figure out how to get craft growers able, up and running to grow outside. I just think there's ways for both industries to help each other, but we've been battling each other for so long We're just at the cusp of like embracing one another. And I don't know what the answer is, Cole. I think it is a genuine problem, but the path forward has to be working together, right? It can't be continuing to battle each other, because we'll just put all these people we're just going to harm each other. We're going to put the social equity applicants out of business. We're going to put ourselves out of business. It's enough already. Like, it's one plant. Let's work on it together, you know?
Well, it all rolls into one, and that was my one pun for this one. I usually have an allotted two. Panelists, Allie, Jennifer, Christopher, thank you so much for sharing everything, not only here, but in the chat. And I think everyone's provided contact information. Anyone with the panel that wants to get in touch with these folks that don't have it, please, Brad at GrownIn.com. We'll make sure we make the proper connection. A round of applause to everybody, 1871, panelists, cohort, everybody. Great immersive week one. We look forward to one final session with Stephanie Miller in about 23 minutes. And then we look forward to seeing all of you, or many of you, in person the week of February 12th when we convene at the Merchandise Mart in Chicago. Thanks, everybody.